And these handful of folks, renegades, you might want to call them, whatever you want to call them, these handful of folks are actually stopping anything far right or far left from popping out, or they're also stopping progress on things that need to get done too. A couple of pods ago, and I think I offended Mike to no end.
Oh.
Not really, but he really wanted to drill down on the basketball metaphor, and it was not well done. So I was thinking of Michael Jordan. And I was thinking this is something that you and I could kind of relate to since you're a hoops guy and you're hobbling around.
I am hobbling on an injury.
Because, you're still working it.
Still trying.
Still working it. Hey, use it or lose it, right? So MJ is sitting there about ready to open up a sack of McDonald's. And Larry Bird, who just so happens to be a famous NBA player. I don't know why anybody wonders who the GOAT is. That's crazy to me. Michael Jordan is a special human being. Let's carry on. And he's like, what you got there? He goes, Big Mac, fries. Larry Bird says, play you for it. And
one of the greatest commercials ever. Right?
Probably. So they keep just nothing but net. And then all of a sudden they're on the top of the stadium. Off the scoreboard, off this, bounce, on the free throw line, nothing but net. Boom, boom. Okay, off the freeway, off blah, blah, blah. So subway, yada, yada, yada.
It's like 8 or 9-year-olds when that commercial came out. We did that in the driveway. It was like off the roof stuff. Yeah,
it was the coolest bloody commercial.
Yeah.
It likely was McDonald's best commercial. Now they got the ba 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 thing, and they need to go back to the MJ and Bird because that was so bloody cool. It was iconic. But so we're talking about that basketball in the backyard a few pods back. So what I meant by this particular metaphor, where I was going with it, or this example, or whatever we want to call this, is I was poking fun at my son who can't hop a fence, which is still bothersome, but let's carry on. We've got him moving and shaking right now. But this basketball goes over the fence while we're playing hoops in the backyard, and at the end of the day, jumping over the fence is trespassing, okay? The ball is not the neighbor's ball. It is my son's ball, or mine really, but it's over on their property. And so when it comes to kind of dialing in the issue that we have with immigration is, all right, the ball is a person. We'll call them an undocumented immigrant, okay, an undocumented individual in like a basketball in somebody's backyard, okay, when that backyard happens to be Arizona. Okay, Arizona has a lot of these undocumented individuals in its state, within the borders of its state. So the ball is in the backyard. But the owner of the backyard, you and I, Arizonans, we live here, we own or pay taxes, we live here, this is our backyard, okay, can do nothing about the ball because all they can do is sit there and they can keep the ball where it's at, but then it's the federal government that chooses what happens to that ball.
True. Yeah.
That's where I was going with this.
Okay. Yeah. Jurisdiction lies with the federal government. And so, yeah, as much as Arizona would want to detain, arrest, send back, throw the ball back over the fence, whatever it is, they can't do it.
So my question would be to you is, should this be a federal issue or should this be a state issue?
Oh, God. I think that one's loaded. I mean, I think the reason that you would cause potential chaos is if you had states each having their own enforcement and each having their own differences of, and what it would end up doing is you're just going to have immigrants that'll flood certain states. That'd be one. Yeah. So, because they'll move, they obviously are not going to put themselves in a situation where they're going to be treated differently than other states. I don't know. I haven't ever thought of that to see what kind of logistics that would create. I think it would create a mess in some ways. I mean, obviously border states are going to be more sensitive to it than others
Right.
because they see it and they're seeing the crossings.
Well, it's kind of like I'm doing a bunch of demolition at the house right now. And it's like the first, okay, so we had a flood. And so the first bit of property or, inside the house that got hammered but with the water, the first bit before it started creeping in, into more issues and more areas, it's the first part that got it the worst. So what I'm saying is here we are in Arizona. We're the first step for mankind for a lot of these immigrants. And Texas is, and California. But Texas seems to jam up anything federal that we ever get cooking or along.
At least they're trying, yeah.
Texas kind of needs to go to hell. And I hope a lot of Texans watch us because they're not used to hearing that language. But I myself am a little bit older than everybody else in this room. And there was this movie called The Cowboy Way. And there are two hicks. It's got Woody Harrelson and Kiefer Sutherland in it. It's a great watch. And these two guys are not California, in New York. It's, the whole plot of these two just never been to a big city, rodeo boys are in New York trying to get something figured out, right? And some attractive gal goes, "Are you a cowboy? Are you from Texas?" The offense on Woody Harrelson's face. The offense that he took by being called a Texan. Shh. And he pulls off his boot and yanks out a little rock, rolls out of his boot, goes, "That ain't no real cowboy from Texas. That there's from New Mexico." Anyway, it was a really fun part. But ever since then, I've thought, okay, yeah, those Texas people are really jamming up sometimes some progress in the immigration world.
Yeah, and the state issue is an interesting one because remember that, a lot of times we talk about, on this podcast or whatever else, the enforcement body of immigration, right? But immigration's an umbrella. So if you're talking about immigration itself being a state issue, then you're having to deal with legal immigration as well. So, each state's airport is going to have to, transmit visas and either allow or disallow somebody to enter into the United States. You've got a lot of business that transacts through immigration, trying to keep each state would have their own, I guess, national security type database. I don't know how you would.
So wouldn't it make sense?
It would be really hard
on a level, and we could keep popping this a little bit. I like it. It's like one of those packages that come with the bubble wrap, and you start popping the bubble wrap, and you can't stop.
Yeah,
it's like one of them things. So okay, but there are some states that really welcome business and really are better to do business in this state over another.
All right, can you imagine New York having to handle, the amount of transitory, like multi-billionaires and millionaires that pass through that, whether it be on a B-1 visa just to come and check on their company for a couple weeks. And
right.
Yeah, having a state in charge of immigration would be interesting.
It would be interesting because here's my thoughts on it. And I'm not saying they're right. The reality is I'm just kind of spitballing.
Sure.
I kind of love the idea of one part of this, and that's it. And so therefore, it's no solution really. But one part of this is, okay, I have a furniture company, and I'm going to want to not pay state taxes. So my huge furniture company is in
Delaware.
It used to be a Delaware thing. Now people are kind of flooding over to Florida for some of these reasons. Texas is typically a pretty good place to do business. Arizona is not a bad place to do business. So in that regard, how many multi-million-dollar companies or just companies in general retain you to help them with their workforce?
Yeah. You're I've never even thought this
is like
thing.
Free enterprise, baby.
Well, and I think that most states would be okay with the enforcement part of it. I think each state has their enforcement body, but I think the logistics of it is if you're enforcing, let's say, an illegal immigrant and trying to send him back, you're still having to find out how he came over. There's still got to be some kind of central vetting, and then if it was legal or illegal, and each state handling that would be.
So I got to figure it out then. So now that we know that the states can't do it,
I'm literally, this is the first time you've stumped me on trying to I'm at a loss for words to even know how to even start with a state
because
handling
the states
immigration.
can't do it. It would be too kittywampus. It would be this state's singing. Nothing's chorus about this. Nothing's in sync. So there's a reason it's a federal issue.
Yes.
And so we put a bunch of razor wire 100 yards into our state for enforcement. Okay, that might be fine. The state may be allowed to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think like a National Guard issue, I know that's always been up. Hey, we're going to put our National Guard on the border to help out. I think those ones are more doable. I mean, obviously the federal government fights against that.
Right.
Those types of enforcement issues, because you're actually you're helping enforce federal law that's already written. You're not writing your own law. Right. You're not enforcing your own law. I think that's a little different. But
yeah, which Arpaio tried to get away with that as far as he could. But, at the end of the day, okay, that's a different issue than national policy when it comes to immigration. So the reason somebody that works in this industry 100% of the time, Westover law firm, is immigration. And the beauty of this is, okay, and you're like, oh, I can't, it's like I'm given some compelling, interesting, okay, but this might work and this might work. Okay, I
just can't wrap my head around how 50 individual states with different politics and different leaders and different populations of immigrants. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking just nationalities. So, here we're mostly Mexican illegal immigrants. Florida, you've got a bunch of Haitians, Cubans, right? New York, you got a conglomerate of everybody. Yeah. And so it would be really difficult.
Yeah, my son's in Virginia right now, and they're running into El Salvador, Ecuador, sure. Hondureños. They're running into also. I mean, it's just like, have you met somebody from Mexico yet?
Yeah,
it's like very rare.
No, and I wasn't in the United States, but Toronto being 20 miles from the United States or whatever else, yeah, same thing. It's a multinational or multicultural city, and I, for a while, didn't feel like I spoke to a Canadian the entire time I was there.
Right.
And I lived there for 2 years. So yeah, I mean it's
a long time. So I'm thinking, all right, so we got that figured that, okay, it can't be. So this is actually a federal issue. And we've talked about how it's three-pronged. It's those that are here, those that want to come here, and enforcement. Those are the three things that mainly the umbrella that you speak of. So what I would like to see is I'd like to see Texas get bucked off their high horse. And I'd like to see Arizona, and I'd like to see California. I'd like to see the border states. Like we had the Gang of Eight a while back, that was pretty much what that was senators and Congress folks from those border states getting together trying to figure something out. Democrat, Republican alike. Okay. I'd like to see a comprehensive reform bill. And I was saying in the last go-around that, and I want to put it a little bit more abruptly. I want to shake whomever does listen to this. I want to shake them because I want Glenn Beck to watch this. I want Patrick Betts-David to watch this. I want Tim Pool to watch this. I want Bill O'Reilly to watch this. I want whomever is running CNN's ship right now to watch this. I want Maddow to watch this. I want people that spew out news to grip a clue and realize all they're talking about is enforcement. Yes, agree, we have a problem with enforcement. Newsflash, we always have. Yes, it's bigger now, but we've always had a problem with enforcement. And the way the reporting is done is as if it is only enforcement as the issue, and that is just one part of it. And I wouldn't even say it's the biggest part of it. I would say they're all three equally important.
Yeah.
All three. You've got to deal with those that are here. We don't have the money or the wherewithal to deport 20 to 40 million people. And that's being pretty generous, in my opinion, because we were saying 11 million undocumented before Obama took office. Yeah. I mean, this 11 million, is that stagnant? I don't
that
see
number's
how.
grown, yeah, and I don't know where they're getting.
So we're playing pure makeup number now. And so anyway, so we have to deal with that because we don't have any way to deal with that other than deal with that. And so There's that. And then there are people that want to come over. Okay, we're going to have to deal with that. We're going to have a comprehensive policy. Now, this is where they're going to cut on the pod. The pod will keep rolling on. But this is where they're going to cut on the pod because I'm done talking about this. Now I want to shift gears. I feel like we're getting to a point now where, immigration aside, we're getting to a point where the pendulum has swung so far left that it's going to violently swing. We've seen a few of these swings before in our days. It's going to violently swing.
The overcorrection.
Too far right. And I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm actually not that concerned about the Trump effect or whomever else might be the patriots they call themselves now, or we used to say liberal, now there's progressive. There's words that are
Tea Party.
There's words that are being used now that, frankly, you've got extreme folks. I don't want to see this go extreme. It got us into an Iraq war. I don't want to see an extreme violent over here to where everybody's kind of just as narrow, just in a different lane. And so I've never seen in my lifetime the potential or the ability of that pendulum when it comes swiping back around, kind of slowing down right here in the middle and just dangling for a minute. That's something that I think
I would love it, but I don't.
The possibility of it is odd to contemplate. But here's why I think we could.
Okay, I hope so.
What we're doing right here is happening all across. So all the folks that I just called out a little bit, I actually do very much enjoy their programming and their podcasts. And there's a lot of people that are getting a lot more information on some of these. I mean, even Joe Rogan is spitting out some pretty decent information quite regularly. And there's conversations being had, lion and the lamb, whichever is which, are sitting down together and disagreeing together. I find that that's interesting. That's kind of a cultural issue. Before this pod, we started kind of going, all right, we were talking about music and we were talking about, timing and all that jazz. I like to say that culture is tied to, a lot of people tie it to Hollywood. I tie it to music. And there has not been one damn good song written in almost 2 decades until the last few years. It's all of a sudden there's some thoughtful
people actually expressing an idea.
Yeah.
Sure. And they've gotten criticized for it and also gotten a lot of support. I know on the country music side of thing, there's been some interesting.
They're spilling it out there with some soul behind it, whether you like that type of music or not. I do. But
I'll listen to anything. But I hope we can. I think you're right in the sense that the culture that we're living in, or the generation that we're living in, is probably the most informed generation that we've dealt with. Right? It was just, there's so much out there that can keep you up to date. My biggest thing that I've always kind of encouraged, my family members that spew out headlines on their social media but don't actually read the article.
Right.
I mean, COVID brought that on heavily on both sides. Like, oh, we're killing babies to make a COVID vaccine. And then at the other end, it was, this is the life-saving element of our generation type of thing. So I got really frustrated. And during the political cycle of Trump and Biden, and even back to Obama, we had so much stuff going on that people weren't actually reading the actual story and finding out what was it. So I would encourage, and I hope, and I've talked to everybody that I see these articles, I'll gently message them and say, hey, did you read the whole article? Absolutely a good idea, but here's what it actually says.
Right.
And so we have a very informed generation. I just hope that they don't just continue to read the headlines, because that, unfortunately, is happening a lot.
Right.
But with this informed generation, you're right. I mean, the more knowledge, knowledge is power. So the more knowledge that we have, and true knowledge, meaning reading the whole thing and getting all your facts straight, I think the more, when you have that knowledge, the more sensitive you are to both sides of it, I would hope. And so, if there is, you're probably in the talk radio realm more than I am, it sounds like. I like it a little bit, but I kind of burned out of it a few years ago, so I tend to do some other things. But hopefully those people, like you said, and you would know better than me, are spewing out stuff that both sides can listen to, and putting talking points on both the right and the left side, and hopefully the pendulum swings in the middle.
I kind of want a dangle in the middle. I think everybody really, truly wants, if the smoke clears, would like the dangle in the middle. The problem is the compromise that comes with that is the compromise of power. And so the ultimate, I'm not sure this will ever happen, kind of our first knee jerk, is the power flavor behind why the pendulum is way over here and about ready to swing violently. Historically has swung violently. Let's see what happens. I actually don't think that we're set up for a violent swing that way. I think that we're set up for, it's very interesting. You look at Congress and you look at the Senate right now, and it's literally just a handful of people that really kind of determine whether anything gets done or not. And these handful of folks, renegades, you might want to call them, whatever you want to call them, these handful of folks are actually stopping anything far right or far left from popping out, or they're also stopping progress on things that need to get done too.
Do you think that is that running its course? And I asked that question just because Kristen Sinema's not running again.
Right.
And she's been one of those.
Right.
Like her or not, she's been one that has stuck her nose out on both sides of it. She's gone against her party several times. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that I know she was extremely frustrated with this recent immigration reform that was proposed that was basically shot down real quick. And I know she's not seeking re-election. Do you think there's enough still left that are going to stick their nose out there? Because it feels like those that do are, for whatever reason, not running again. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's others, but I just kind of thought that was interesting that she's not.
I think that you're going to see, and this is what I'm kind of a little bit, let's see where it goes. I think what you're going to see is you've got a lot of folks that are, okay, we're headline readers, and even you and I can fall into this category, because if you really drill down on what, let's just call Marjorie Taylor Greene, is viewed as being very aggressively hardcore right side of the Republican aisle, hard right. And she's definitely painted that way in the coverage and in the news. But when you read, which I find this interesting, when you read whatever committee she's on, whatever proposal she's pushing, you're like, wow, that makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. Why? I don't understand why
the media is covering her a certain way, or why
she's
why the
painted
reputation
into
that
this.
she has.
And so, okay, on the left, they're very unified. They've got a very unified march. They're stopped because you have this fringy type. I don't consider Sinema that type. Okay, Sinema went to the right when it behooved her, and to the left when it behooved her. She was a good politician, in my opinion.
I mean, she switched parties at one point.
Right. I mean, the bottom line is between she and what was that fellow's name from Virginia that was a Democrat congressman that was all the rage, that kind of slowed a lot of bills down. What was that guy's blooming name? Yeah. He's no longer either. He also, hung it up. There's a certain soul cell that comes with
politics. Always has.
Yep. Has been around for a long, long period of time. And I feel like the soul selling or the purchasers are getting let down because now they're not getting what they need to get done. And so right now I feel like there's a regrouping of how to wield the special interests power. Okay, I don't think it's noble. I think there's just a new grouping. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene or this Matt Gaetz, the guys that jump up and down the loudest, or Jim Johnson or Cotton, or all these guys that really make some noise, Rand Paul.
Mike Lee.
Right. I mean, there's some guys that make some noise, but they're no louder than Schumer or Pelosi. I mean, damn. I mean, we got some loud voices in politics. But then recently you've got a 9-0 Supreme Court decision that basically said, no, this is a federal issue, and no, each state can't be doing this on their own beat. That's why I started out with The immigration being state by state by state, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that's
it can't happen.
Alito on the court. So if anybody's gonna, yeah.
And that's what I mean. Can you imagine 9-zip with this particular division in court? And so that's when I first thought, okay, well, let's take the whole whatever they were arguing about out of it. That's really refreshing. That you've got some fairly extreme justices right now on both sides of this fence, and you got a lot of moderates in there too.
That came to the same conclusion I did when you asked me the question and said there's
Yeah.
just no way that a state can handle this. Yeah.
Yep.
Or it would just cause a
Mayhem.
mess. Yeah, mayhem.
It'd be complete cluster. And so they had that response, and I was like, it's interesting to me because that's immigration. That's this recent 9-0 decision. But the reality is that decision gave me a little bit of about Mexico. We've had people in our offices. We do criminal defense work here at the Arizona firm. The Arizona firm also does accident stuff, and they also do divorce. We see the community, the Latino community, in that section, that slice of something they're dealing with in those things. Where they got a criminal charge breathing down their neck, and they're scared out of their mind, and their families are scared with them. Well, these are typically folks that are also seeking your services because
some kind of consequence or
right,
else,
maintaining their status here in Arizona or in the United States, or achieving
going after something,
their status in the United States. Okay, so we get to see the community, and we get to feel them and touch them and understand. Okay, that they've got souls, and these folks are easy to really
cheer for,
really love, cheer for, and just they really are. So let's figure something that works out. Well, this 9-0 decision made me think that's possible. And this little divisions that we have going on in the Congress and in the Senate and all this jazz this and all this jazz that, the divisions are enough now to where, well, hold on, maybe something can get done when I'm about to say something that's not going to be popular. When our oligarchs put up the white flag while they're retooling to see how they're going to reinvent the wheel and re-corrupt the system. Because right now, if you're somebody that has billions of dollars and interested in, let's say, a distraction somewhere in Europe, so you can mine cobalt with impunity, right? Well, what party are you going to now? What party are you going to at this point? You're an oligarch that has this particular special interest. Which party can get this done for you? Well, right now, none of them. So the left is losing its stranglehold because the money, these special interests, we call them, worldwide they're known as oligarchs. They're known as the cartel in Mexico, right? That's just a special interest. They got a lot of money behind them.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of is interesting to sit and watch this go, this is interesting. If I were this, mastermind behind a cartel / oligarch / special interest, whatever, who would I be giving my money to right now? Who's getting anything done? Well, oddly enough, it's the president. It's like an executive.
Right now, yeah. We've had more executive memos than we've had in a long time as far as, how much power can be wielded from that office, which was traditionally not a lot, or at least wasn't. They didn't take the chance on doing it. But, Obama was the first one that really wanted
really
to
took the bull by the horns. Yeah.
And then it's continued since then.
Yeah. I would say actually Trump less than Obama and less than Biden as far as executive actions went. But
even he used it.
Yes.
In
more than
surprisingly. And especially I see it on the immigration side of things because, and for Trump it was less, he didn't make the news a lot doing it, but what happened was he just passed the buck to his AG. So his attorney general did a lot of stuff that probably didn't make the news, but sure was felt on my end.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there was some unintended consequences there because now all of a sudden we're talking about, we've got two buzzwords in immigration now that we really have always had amnesty as a buzzword, but now there's a new one, asylum. So the two A words, it's like asylum was, you've explained this to us well. Asylum was a nothing burger. And then locking all of, creating this logjam in Mexico, having remain in Mexico, kind of opened the door for this asylum word that.
Yeah, the enforcement, I mean, that's the big change, is the enforcement, the way they let people into the country changed, and that, for whatever reason, just caused this weird news cycle in Latin America that, the borders open and come on in. And in certain respects, that's what happened. I mean, I'm still seeing people in my office daily of, hey, I'm seeking asylum, and I walk them in and say, okay, why? Like, that's my first question. Okay, why did you come here? Like, what's your asylum claim? And number one, they don't understand it. And number two, then yesterday the story was, my uncle died 15 years ago, and so they attacked my family or whatever else. And I'm like, okay, was that recent? Well, no. My uncle's been dead 15 years. Okay, is it because you were part of a particular group, which is part of this asylum claim? No. And so ultimately it was just, well, I want a better life, which I totally get. It's just not the purpose of asylum. And so they're being told that this better life that they've always wanted is open for business because of this asylum issue. It's changed, like we talked about a few weeks ago. They are starting to detain people, and the credible fear interviews are being vetted a lot more. I think there was some heavy political pressure, and maybe it's election cycle or whatever else. They're trying to slow the curve. But yeah, for about at least, I would say 9 to 12 months, we had a flood of a lot of stuff going on.
And you had to give a lot of folks a lot of bad news.
Eventually, they're going to get it. Like, they got good news in the sense that they're here and potentially can, even work. There's work authorizations available. And in the short term, that's what I always tell people. Look, this may have looked pretty in the short term, but eventually this case may lead to a deportation, and that's going to ruin your chances of coming back in the future. So a lot of these people put themselves, without knowing it, in a future immigration risk.
Right. So it's interesting to keep this pendulum from swinging way over here. Now, politically, I feel like it's a no-brainer which way to go in this next election cycle, but the reality is everybody can vote whom they're going to vote for. But it seems no-brainer to me looking at what we're looking at. That said, I also feel that if we were to go that direction, and I feel like that's the one way. This is ridiculous, but I've been thinking on this for a minute and a half. I actually think that that's the best way not to overswing. When you overswing in golf and you're just probably not...
The ball doesn't go very far. Yeah.
No, but you put that good,
Solid, yeah. It's just a little rhythmic thing, yeah.
And you get that, and you hit that ball just so... It may not go Tiger Woods' length, but it's straight, and it's where you want it to go. And I really feel like, oddly enough, the person that everybody's so fearful of, the Trump train, is the one known that we have in the run-in here that might, I don't foresee the swing being way out here because there's more of a unity with
the left
Trump
side and his,
and there's more of a unity on the moderate to conservative side with Trump. And to me, that kind of equals out a little bit to where some things can get done.
And he is one that, get credit where credit's due. He is one that wants to get things done. And so maybe there's a lesson learned of, hey, all the name calling and rhetoric that I did to tick a lot of people off that basically lost me my reelection. Maybe I'm not going to do that this time, and I'm going to focus on getting things done. And because he has the capability of doing it, and right wing or not, he does like to get things done. If he could pull out all the
reality
stuff
is
that
what
makes him news.
What did he do that was right wing? Like nothing. Like he was conservative.
Yeah, tax cuts and whatever else.
That's what the conservatives do.
For me, that was great.
And, sure. And job creation and the industry and the
industry. Yeah, even on immigration, if you were to talk, he put pressure on the DACA situation lawsuit, but ultimately Texas filed that. It wasn't Trump that filed that kind of delayed us on that.
I thought that it would have been if the right people surround, because obviously immigration he's not a professional in immigration, but he did stop the flow after 3 years. he stopped the flow to a very, very respectable. Okay, okay, now let's work with that. Okay, how did this happen? How do we get this going? Now let's work with what are we doing with the ones that are here? What are we doing with the ones that are wanting to be here? Let's do the comprehensive reform. I don't know if it would have gotten to that point because we've seen Reagan got pretty far for a little bit, and then it just kind of fell flat. Bush Sr., made a little bit of splash in immigration and then kind of fell flat. Nothing really happened from that point all the way till Obama, who really just cherry-picked DAPA.
No, DACA. I mean, DAPA didn't work.
DAPA didn't work,
really
so DACA. And so they there was something done there, but then again, that was an executive. And
have you heard Bush Jr. talk? He really is. That's his biggest regret when I hear him talking, publicly, is that he thought he could pull off immigration reform. Bush Jr. He really, and he tried and tried and tried with different things, and he never could find the right footing to do it. But I've heard him talk a lot about, and even on his right wing side of things, he really wanted something comprehensive done, and could never do. I think 9/11 kind of derailed him a little bit, but
I think Freddie and Fannie Mae derailed him.
Yeah, and other things. Yeah.
But that said, it's great. I mean, I don't, one way or the other, the fact that we went into Iraq, I was like, are you kidding me? What the hell is going on in Iraq that we have any business being over there for? So that part of things with Bush Jr. bothers me some. However, that would have been bitching because he's from Texas.
He really wanted something done. I've heard him talk on some book tours and different things like that, and that was one thing that he kept having on his agenda in every election. I mean, he had a couple shots at it, and he just never could pull it off.
He's retired now. He doesn't have much better to do. Why don't you start talking to your old cronies and let's start figuring something out? Because Texas definitely seems to be a hurdle.
That's a weird thing, right? Remember, presidents used to be pretty involved after they were done. Like I remember Clinton being involved in negotiating different things. I don't remember what it was that he was involved in, but I remember he was a big source of bringing to the table Jimmy Carter during Middle East talks, and we don't do that anymore. President Obama or President Trump for maybe different political reasons, but President Obama hasn't, from what I know, hasn't been much part of trying to bring people to the table. I don't know. Maybe I'm not listening as good, but I just remember former presidents used to be very big brokers in
Junior
negotiation.
Wasn't that old when he was done, so he could have been very relevant in pushing that agenda.
And I haven't heard any.
And especially given the fact that he's obviously Texas fella.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a hurdle that we have, is to have Arizona and Texas and California. Okay, hold the phone. How are we going to get something figured out between those three differing states? Because we would have to have those three states, the majority of it on board.
Because they're the enforcement body for that at the very least, and that part of the umbrella has to be taken care of on their borders.
So just to have the three prongs, those three states, in my opinion, need to be on board and need to really spearhead this thing and be loud enough to get it done. So I'm seeing this pendulum. It appears that it's swinging, but I would like it to kind of slow and not way overshoot over
we talked that with, back to our asylum thing. That's what we talked about, right? Trump did something to curb the flow of things, whether it needed to be done or not. I've kind of argued that maybe not messing with it would have been the better thing because it wouldn't have caused this ultimate swing. But that's what ultimately happened is you had a little bit of a swing to the right. And I don't think Trump's was a full pendulum swing to the extreme, but it was a little swing. And then you had Biden comes along and wipes the whole thing out and swings way to the left. And now we've caused this problem that we've caused. And I'm only speaking on the immigration side of things, but hopefully not. I hope that we swing just moderately back towards something.
Back to that, the greatest commercial of all time. You've got MJ and Bird, and they're playing a game of horse, and this game of horse is still going on as far as I'm concerned. In my mind's eye, this is still going on. They're like on the Himalayas, over the Saturn, to blah, 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 blah. But nothing but net. That was awesome. It's time that we figure out how to handle that basketball in the backyards of the 50 states, and it's time that we get there. But I'm really rooting huge that the way I see that happening is that pendulum cannot swing violently, because if it swings violently, then we're going to misuse the opportunity to get
we're going to be in
real.
the same position that every 4 years we're just swinging it back and forth. And then, like you said,
we just
when
get
that happens,
nauseous.
nothing gets done.
Right. We
Causes
just get
more
nauseous. What was it? What movie was that on? That you know what happens if you don't? Like, he was, okay, it's Braveheart. It's Braveheart, and he's talking to his buddy Amish, the redhead, the big, brawny guy. It was cool as all get out. He goes, "Why do we need the nobles anyway? They're all dirty." So we talked about cartels. We talked about oligarchs. We talked about special interests. Yes, we have these things here. Okay, and he was wondering why do they need the nobles? And he said, and this is William Wallace, to Mel Gibson's character, he said, well, you know what happens if we don't have them with us? And he says, what? Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
So I think we end it there.
All righty.